They tell you in this world that knowledge is power, and that is largely untrue. It's not knowledge that leads to power. It's applied knowledge. And in the world that we live in, nobody's going to spoon feed you that knowledge. The knowledge is not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. You're not going to get one of those probes shoved into the back of your head like Neo in the Matrix, and when you're done, you know Kung Fu. In this world, you must self-educate in order to acquire any level of knowledge that you can then apply to attain whatever level of power in this world that you will ever obtain. So knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Self-education is the key to that. In our world, the powers that be, the powers that believe they be, those that are in the cabal of the power structure, they do not want you educated. They want you dumbed down, and as I have so eloquently put it in the past, they want you stoned and stupid, apathetic, and largely compliant. They want you to listen to, quote-unquote, your authority, and they want obedience and compliance. Look upon the landscape of the world that you live in. Look at what you see is the objective reality in comparison to what actually goes on. And if you are someone that does not have the eyes to see the difference between objective reality and what it is that they show us in the media, through social media, and things of that nature, then the disconnect that prevents someone from having the eyes to see is a lack of foundational knowledge. To a large degree, learning and knowledge stack on top of each other. As you learn at one level, you acquire knowledge. That knowledge broadens awareness. That awareness is conducive to rising your level of consciousness. To a large degree, in many facets and aspects of this life, you will not have the eyes to see without first sacrificing the time that it takes, the investment of energy, into ingesting the information that gives rise to knowledge, that broadens awareness, that leads to an expansion of the human consciousness. Humans are not taught this in school. Generally, parents don't teach this stuff. We're not taught this stuff on television. And there is really no part of our society that explains this to us, that teaches us these things, and leads us down a path of learning that leads to knowledge. We have to discover this for ourselves, and then we have to blaze our own trail in whatever way that will manifest for any one of us individually. And that trail is the one, that path is the one that we walk down, and in doing so, you will sacrifice personal time. You will sacrifice free time. You will sacrifice, for guys, chase and skirt time, drinking beer time, or whatever it is, game time, TV time.
Watching NASCAR and drinking beer.
TV time. That we occupy our time with, that are largely trivialities, that we engage in to entertain ourselves or to pass the time, that do not lead the human being anywhere of substance or meaning. If you want to truly grow as a human, if you want to truly evolve, you must put in the time to learn the things that are necessary for this to take place. And what they teach us in school, science, or in the ways that they do, mathematics, English, reading, all those subject matters, they do not provide the human this understanding or any of that foundational knowledge other than, how to read, things of that nature. Evolution of yourself as a human being is not just spiritual enlightenment, sitting in the lotus position and meditating and going Om. Evolution of the human being is going to come by, to a large degree, through the vehicle of the mind. The Hermetic principles tell us the all is mind. The universe is mental, lending itself to how important our mind is in our experienced reality? Well, much that lends itself to how we think and our perceptions, while some of it is based off of our experiences, I think to such a large degree, a vaster portion of that comes from the level of knowledge that we have. And then the application of that knowledge in our personal lives, in our daily lives. When you look at the world and you can identify the players that are running it, and consider to yourself what it is that they must know that affords them the opportunity to maintain the white-knuckle death grip that they have, the level of control over the influence of the human mind through all the vehicles and mechanisms that they use to influence the human mind. When you ask yourself, and then do some research into this to discover it for yourself, what do these people know? What do these people study? What, if anything, are they masterful at? Some of that stuff is the human mind and the human psychology. And since they sit on the dark side, that knowledge lends them the opportunity, gives them the opportunity to manipulate you like cattle, as they've been so obviously and overtly doing for the last year and a half or so. The cabal of people that run the world, that are parts of these secret societies and other such clubs, if you will, these people, to varying degrees for all of them, study the mystery schools, study the occult, and they learn the principles that these mystery schools and occult philosophies teach them, and they apply them. Applied knowledge is power. You could consume all the knowledge, all the information that would lead to knowledge that you want. And if you do not apply it in your life, it's effectively useless information that's clouding or cluttering up your mind because you're not using it. Maybe cluttering it up is a little bit of a wrong statement. It's just you're putting information into your head that would lead itself to knowledge, lend itself to knowledge. But if you're not using it, if you're not applying it, what is it serving you? What good is it doing you? And how is it benefiting you? Applied knowledge is the key to power in this world, and it is the key to the evolution of the human being. Strangely enough, in this world, knowledge is also a double-edged scalpel of sorts. Because as you learn and as you take in information, as you acquire and gain knowledge, it changes your perspective. It shifts your perspective and will ultimately lead to changing your perceptions. Acquiring and ingesting information that leads to knowledge is painful. Because as you learn more, the current paradigm that you function under largely will begin to form cracks, and eventually, to the degree that you are committed to it, your paradigm will shatter. At which point you have to reform your belief systems, reform your paradigm, reestablish your perceptions based on and rooted in the level of knowledge that you have. The more you learn, the more you know, the more that you will be able to have the eyes to see. And the more that you see, and to the degree of clarity that you see, will begin to show you that the reality of the world that you live in, and the way reality has been presented to all of us, there is a vast chasm between the true reality versus what they have conditioned us, indoctrinated us, brainwashed us into believing is real, is the reality, versus what you will learn when you, for instance, begin to study various mystery school teachings, in alchemical teachings, hermetic teachings, Gnostic teachings, magic, witchcraft, if you're into that. Studying philosophy will begin to give you the faculties that are necessary for critical thought, for asking questions, asking the right questions, and analyzing questions. When you study alchemy, you begin to learn the principles of transmutation, of taking something in its gross form and refining it into something that is pure. When you study hermetics, you learn about the 7 hermetic principles. And when you compare what you knew before you, for instance, took in that body of information to how you thought or believed reality worked versus, as an example, what the 7 hermetic principles will teach you, and then meditate on those principles and then begin to look at the world and compare what you thought you knew, compare what you think you know, to what you can now see through your understanding of, for instance, hermetic principles. Alchemy is something that when the human undergoes a study of the alchemical principles, the alchemical teachings, an evolution will take place within that human. A lot of these mystery schools, in order to obtain higher levels of knowledge, to even be exposed to it, they bring you to yourself, looking into yourself, looking at your motivations, looking at your inner psychology, analyzing any inner wounding that you may have from childhood, from life, relationships of every kind. And in order to advance in these subject matters, Golden Dawn, alchemy, hermetics, things of that nature, whatever it might be, it is required, for the most part, that one does the inner work, that one heals the inner wounding, heals the inner child. This is work that many humans will shy away from. This is work that many humans see as painful and will run away from, like their hair's on fire. Thusly, we see a world full of wounded people. Thusly, we see a world full of grown adults that in many aspects of their psychological makeup or the makeup of their emotional body, they are emotional children. And this is not a criticism. I'm not saying it to be condescending or demeaning to them or the condition that they're in. This sort of thing is rampant upon the earth. If you can at least see at a high level the level of manipulation being levied upon most humans in this world, and begin to analyze that and realize that the reason that they're being manipulated, taken advantage of, and believe this stuff is because they lack the knowledge. They lack the knowledge that would give rise to the understanding of how things actually work. And one of the most profound things that any human will ever discover is the depths of their own ignorance, because we're all born ignorant. We're born blank slates. We have to learn everything. And when the human truly aligns with how ignorant they are, and again, it's not something I'm saying to be critical of anyone. I had to go through it, and everybody else that walks down these roads also goes through it. And it's largely their understanding of their ignorance that drives them into having a desire to walk down these roads or walk down these paths of learning and knowledge, of knowledge that leads to awareness, that broadens consciousness, and the whole way, your level of intelligence is increasing. Your level of consciousness is increasing. And all of these, little by little, lead to the evolution of the human being. All of the knowledge that one must have that gives rise to these things that I'm talking about, to such a large degree, is never going to be handed to any of us. Nobody is going to want to sit there and spoon feed it to us. We have to put in the work. Nobody can do your push-ups for you, and nobody can read a book for you, and let your mind, nobody can make your mind process information that it hasn't taken in. And to circle back to something that I said before, knowledge is a double-edged scalpel, because it shatters the paradigm. And people will run like their hair's on fire from doing the inner work, from dealing with the wounds and trauma of childhood. But people will also run like their hair's on fire, and it's just a metaphor, when they realize their paradigm is about to shatter. When they realize that they're going down a road that is going to turn their paradigm, it's going to do more than shatter, it's going to turn it into its raw materials, leaving you to do the work to reform your paradigm. Because of the human ego, and sometimes to a large degree the human pride, we like to tell ourselves that we know. We like to tell ourselves a lot of things, and our egos and our pride, to such a large degree, become aspects of the human makeup that can and largely do get in the way of a lot of us being willing to go down a road of consuming knowledge, consuming information that gives us knowledge, that gives us the eyes to see that which we did not see before. And the more we begin to see, the more we begin to understand how the view of the world, what we are, who runs it, what their agendas are, the more we begin to see that for what it actually is, the more we begin to accept, understand, realize, and see how little we knew. And for a lot of people, because of ego, and because of their pride sometimes being, their ego being girded with their pride, they don't want to do it because they're comfortable. And people love to exist in their comfort zone. Putting forth a willful effort to consume information that gives rise to knowledge and understanding and comprehension and awareness is a willful act, and you have to have a desire to do it. And then you have to put in and invest the time, the mental energy, the emotional toll that it takes on you as you reform your paradigm. It's not an easy process to go through. I've been through it probably, no kidding, 8 or 9 times in this life, and I'd say 5 or 6 of them in the last 5 or 6 years alone. It is not fun, but it is necessary. Just like the alchemical process of taking raw materials, that which is considered gross, and refining it into its pure form. It's got to be put in the furnace and burned and heated up. That process, alchemically, the metaphor of it for the human, it's not fun. It's painful. It comes with a lot of challenges, and nobody likes it. But if you can struggle through it, if you can get through it, then you're going to be able to see that pure material. And then, as the metaphor goes for the human, that pure material is then poured out and molded into something beautiful, something magnificent. And as it is said in that alchemical process, you must extract and throw away the dross, the impurities, the materials that do not serve you. And to a large degree, for a lot of us human beings, that resides within our belief systems. Those belief systems have been formed for us by people who have been influencing our minds and our perceptions through the mainstream media, through Hollywood, through religion, through schools, through government propaganda, and on and on and on. So the choice is yours, humans. Do you want to evolve? Do you want to grow? Do you want to achieve something that resembles a higher level of being and consciousness in this world? Then you must put in the time. You must acquire the knowledge. And then you must apply it. And the only way for that to happen is for you to self-educate. For you to educate yourself. Applied knowledge is power. Self-education is the key.